話もできる口づけするより甘くささやき聞くより強く私の心を揺さぶるあなた
For hundreds of kilometers along the east coast of Japan, an almost continuous built-up area has crammed itself in between the mountains and the sea. The city of Hiroshima is part of this endless sprawl, its buildings swarming over a narrow plain backed by the slopes of nearby mountains. In this part of the east coast, the flat land is full up. And in this city, that was destroyed little more than 30 years ago by an atomic bomb, there is already no more room to build. The family we are going to meet in this film live in a housing area that clambers up one of the steep hills that hem the city in on three sides. Their surname is Tsuboi. Mr. Tsuboi works in a car factory, the largest single employer in Hiroshima. His wife is a part-time office worker. Their son Kengo is 13. Their daughter Naomi, 11. With the city's flat land already packed to capacity, the only place for the car factory where Mr. Tsuboi works was in the sea, on specially reclaimed land. The rectangular shape of the car plant juts out from the old coastline. Hiroshima is advancing into the sea. This is an absolutely typical Japanese scene, as typical as the scene inside the factory at the start of the day's shift. Mr. Tsuboi leads his group through the slogans of the day. Today, all day, I will keep my work clothes neat and tidy. Today, all day, I'll follow standard safety procedures. Today, all day, I shall strive to avoid mishaps. Shortly after the start of the production line, an army of men takes over from the machines. For every group of 3 or 4 men fixing parts to the cars, there is one who checks the work they've done. Nobody seems to mind this constant checking. Indeed, the workers on the line accept it. What's good for them is good for the company, and vice versa. This is very much the attitude a Japanese worker has towards his job. Station 204, windscreen wipers and door adjustments, is near the end of the 3-kilometer production line. It's here that Mr. Tsuboi works. He joined the company as a young man and will stay with them until he retires. In exchange for this loyalty, the company provides him and his family with a wide range of services, including medical care, sports and social clubs, loans for housing, and even subsidized company holidays. A Japanese worker doesn't just have a job with his company, he has a relationship with it that runs, as the saying goes, from the cradle to the grave. As the minutes of the day's shift ticked by, we noticed how much talking was going on in Mr. Tsuboi's group. Nearly all the discussions were about jobs on the line, how to do them more quickly and more efficiently. Mr. Tsuboi's group see this as their part of the line. And discussing the work, as well as doing it, helps each man to feel part of a team. So strong is this need to be part of the team that this man has turned up with a sprained wrist. He couldn't work. He just wanted to be there with his workmates. The mid-morning break. Working hours and pay are about the same as for car workers in Britain. Even during the break, two members of the group are still talking about the day's work schedule. Mrs. Tsuboi works as a part-time clerk in an office, a short bike ride from home. Compared to Britain, working mothers are something of a rarity in Japan. A woman's place is still very much in the home. A woman accepts her husband's right to say no if she feels like going out to work, and she doesn't argue the point. It's one of the many ways Japan looks so modern on the surface, but is in fact very traditional underneath. As traditional as the abacus Mrs. Tsuboi uses for doing sums at work. Before Mrs. Tsuboi took this job, what was her husband's reaction to the prospect of his wife going out to work?
My husband didn't have any particular objection, but that's probably because my hours are very short. If the hours had been longer, he would have put his foot down. But since the job was part-time, he didn't say much against the idea.
So what was Mrs. Tsuboi's reason for getting the job?
I knew if I didn't go out to work, I'd be bored. I didn't like the thought that there I was, stuck at home, out of touch with the world that was going on around me. But working outside the home is difficult. I've had to learn to get along with people outside the family circle. It's the human side of the job that's most difficult.
At the factory, the production line has been stopped half an hour before normal finishing time. Mr. Tsuboi's group are being told about a new company sales policy by their group foreman. It seems a strange sort of procedure. Shutting down the line costs a lot of money. Nobody asks any questions, and the management are going to put the policy into effect anyway. But for Mr. Tsuboi and his colleagues, the important thing is that they, the men on the line, have been informed of a top-level decision. Even if he doesn't have a direct say in company policy, a Japanese worker wants to know what's going on. It makes him and his group feel more secure. Knocking off time is 4:30. Mr. Tsuboi lives 15 minutes away from the factory.
朝も暗いのにハンドル握り今日はどこまで行くのやら俺の行く先に札が決める可愛いあの子と泣き別れ
The Tsuboi's daughter, Naomi, has some friends round.
English Picture Dictionary D.
They're having a try at English before they start learning it at school when they're 12.
ピンポンこういうことないよね。
Dream.
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 Dream. Good.
取れた聞こえんかった。
Dry.
ドア。
水や雨などの雫は
Drop.
ドア。
Drop.
ドア。
Mr. and Mrs. Tsuboi have seen their country become rapidly modernized since they were married. We asked Mrs. Tsuboi how she thought people had changed and how her married life compares with the way things were in her parents' time.
そうですね。昔は男の人の性格いうのがこう。
In the old days, the relationship between men and women was much more strict. The man was the boss and the wife obeyed him. So what we are doing now, like me getting permission from my husband to go out to work, would have been very difficult then. In my parents' day, women didn't have the right to decide anything.
For the next generation, things are likely to be even more free and easy. Naomi, the Tsuboi's daughter, is out most evenings at ballet and piano lessons. Quite different from the old days when girls were expected to stay at home. Yet Mrs. Tsuboi knows only too well that even when Naomi is grown up, Japanese traditions won't have changed that quickly.
積極的にやっぱり育てたいんですよね。
So far, I've let Naomi do what she likes. And until she gets married, I want her to be outgoing and have her own opinions. On the other hand, this might not be such a good idea for a girl. When she gets married, I still think that, in a way, she'll have to be obedient to her husband.
We asked Naomi what kind of music she likes listening to.
ピンクレディーが好きだからサウスポーいう曲も好き。
I like listening to the Pink Ladies.
信じられないことばかりあるのもしかしたらもしかしたらそうなのかしら
I I get 25 pence a week pocket money, but I don't buy much. Maybe sweets sometimes. When I have enough money, I put it into the bank.
お金が貯まったら貯金する。
So what's Naomi saving up for?
大きくなったらハワイ一緒旅行。あ、じゃなかった。ハワイに旅行。
Well, when I grow up,
Hawaii.
I want to go to Hawaii for my honeymoon.
In Japanese households, there is a tradition that the husband has the right to go out with his mates after work and not say where he's gone or when he's coming back. Has this tradition yet disappeared from the Tsuboi's household?
私がそう聞いてたんですけど、本人がすごく
Well, I used to ask my husband when he'd be back in the evening,
帰ってく
but he
る
didn't
から
like it, so I stopped asking.
すごくうるさいらしいんですよね。
He said, I don't know when I'll be back, so please don't ask. I think he felt I was sort of tying him down too much. So now I don't bother to ask anymore.
なんか思うけど
On this particular occasion, Mrs. Tsuboi always knows exactly where her husband has gone. Every spring, the factory organizes a cherry blossom viewing party in one of Hiroshima's parks. It's the Japanese equivalent of a works outing. There is one thing above all others that makes this a very Japanese affair. Those attending with Mr. Tsuboi are, to a man, exactly the same people he works with on his section of the assembly line. The group sticks together inside and outside the factory. We asked Mr. Tsuboi who were his best friends, his neighbors at home or his workmates on the production line.
両方同じ。やっぱりね、
They're the same, really. But for me personally, my workmates are the most important. I couldn't feel happy at home if I didn't have really close friends at work. Getting along with my workmates is really what life is all about. You see, I would never think of changing my job. I joined up to devote myself to the company, and the company has looked after me.
自分のためにもあるし。
It works both ways, and I think I've got a good life and a good standard of living out of it. What's good for the company is good for me, good for the children, and good for my country. If you like, it works in a kind of circle.
なんとかサークルと言いますね。
Does all that make Japanese workers sound like a flock of sheep, blindly following their noses for the good of the company? Maybe to us it does, but the Japanese wouldn't have it any other way. In their minds, their system works for the good of everybody. And it's this system that has sold cars from this factory all over the world. Nearly all the raw materials for these cars were imported. Even the land on which the factory was built had to be made. But it doesn't seem to matter. It's the system that gets things done. One last question to Mr. Tsuboi. Is a Japanese car worker proud of the cars he makes?
Yes, もちろん。
Yes, of course.
愛や転がしすり減る